Pilot say what?
It depends on who's asking us what. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So that's the name of the show. It's Pilots Say What, where we hear what pilots have to say, and that's
cool.
how we always start off. And my name is Zachary. I'm your host. If you're returning, then you're familiar with me. But this time we have Gary joining us. Thank you, Gary, for joining in and
Thanks for
coming onto
having
the
me.
show. Absolutely. So I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit. Gary is
Okay.
a CFI here at Thrust Flight. So we'll talk a little bit about being a CFI and what it's like adjusting to it, like we've talked about before. But I want to get a little more into the things he's talking about, maybe scheduling, things like that help you balance out life and your passion for flying. Anyhow, I would like you to maybe introduce yourself a little bit.
Cool. My name is Gary.
Hmm.
I'm a CFI here at Thrust Flight.
Hmm.
I went through the program here as well, all the way from zero time to here.
Yeah.
So I came from a
Nice.
small town in Pennsylvania. We had an airport there. I actually worked next to the airport, like on the departure and the runway, pretty much. We're very close to it. And
Okay.
I was a police dispatcher at the time, and I kept watching these planes take off and land, and I really wanted to do something, but I kind of felt stuck, and you could make a career out of what I was doing, so I
Yeah.
stuck with it for 5 years, and then COVID happened, and I kind of got what's the word encouraged to change my future and
Mm.
decided to look around at different flight schools. Still wasn't sure about everything yet. There were so many options and really had to take my time to choose the correct path for me. I originally thought rotorcraft might be the option for me, but it's kind of expensive and there's not many training schools for that,
Mm.
at least where I'd want to go. And I looked at like the top couple places in the country to maybe learn to fly at a training at a flight school,
Yeah.
and I determined Dallas was probably one of the best besides Florida or Arizona or Nevada.
Okay.
And then I started Google mapping like schools in the area for like Dallas,
Okay.
and I found Thrust.
Okay.
And
And it sounds like you chose Dallas. Like it sounds like you were looking at cities before flight schools.
hmm
Almost. So you wanted to prioritize some of
for
that. And
sure.
why was that? If you don't mind me asking.
Weather's a big factor for it because
Mm.
I did Google like what should you how should you choose a flight school for you, and some of the lists number one usually was weather. And I looked at Florida. Florida's cool with the thunderstorms, I guess, occasionally, but they're not too bad. They do get hurricanes, so I was kind of worried. What if a flight school gets like wrecked by a hurricane and now there goes the
Right.
loan and everything?
Yeah.
So
That's wild.
I looked at like Nevada and Arizona, and sometimes the runways get too hot, so they have to shut them down for the heat. So I was like, that maybe hinder or slow down my process.
Hmm.
And then Dallas just seemed like the middle of all of them that looked really good.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah,
like Dallas.
yeah, it's Texas, so
And it's Texas.
it's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's nice and hot. I love the heat. So
Oh, really?
yeah.
Had you been to Dallas or Texas much
I've
beforehand?
only been to Houston before I moved here, only for like a day or two for like a overnight for a flight going to Cancun.
Yeah.
So
Oh, okay. It was like a
yeah,
layover
yeah,
situation.
I
Gotcha.
barely was here. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you did a lot of research. That's cool because I hear so many different approaches to how people chose what they're gonna do next, and there's a lot of things you said that I really actually do want to dive into. But one, I want to know what made like. Do you feel like you're a thorough person? Because some people they're like, I don't know, I just kind of went with it. I went with the first place I thought of. I'm not really that way. I feel like I do more of what you do.
Yeah, I would say yeah, more thorough than anything.
Hmm.
Anti-procrastination, definitely. Maybe it's some OCD a little bit, but I just want to make sure that I have all my options lined up before I make the choice. You don't
Yeah.
want to miss one.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's
nice.
yeah.
Well, that makes it a little easier for me to ask some of these questions. That would be like that kind of goes something like, uh, did you tour any other schools before you came here? Did you do any discovery flights? What about that
So I
kind of
did a
thing?
discovery flight in Georgia. So in the
Mm,
interim of selling my house in Pennsylvania, I moved to Georgia for a year. My parents had a vacation house there at the time, which I was
nice,
very blessed to have. So I kind of took some time off to
absolutely.
figure out what was going on. I sold the house in Pennsylvania, knowing that at some point I'm going to have to do school somewhere else because the school there is like a mom and pop 61 organization, and
Hmm.
probably wouldn't have been the right option for me anyway. After the discovery flight, I went to get the medical,
Okay.
but I still haven't made a choice yet on the flight school. But I did a small flight school disco flight over there that was pretty eye-opening because it was like a 68 Cessna, like really old and just
Wow.
no AC the window, and it was crazy. So I was like, yeah, either way, I was like, this is awesome. Like this view is
Yeah.
just incredible. So
I mean, it's just something cool about flying an old machine too. I'm imagining,
yes,
not that you would want to do it every day, maybe, but
it's a
yeah,
it's a miracle to watch those old things go up too. Yeah, because
yeah,
I mean, and the old timers, they've been flying those things around forever, and here we are, babysat with our little screens, and it's so much, and I wouldn't say easier, but more situationally aware and safer. And
hmm,
they really risked, I think a lot in the old days, but
yeah.
we're here because of them. So
Yeah, well, and because it's like even when you talk about like the avionics, the six pack versus the G1000,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, there's it almost feels like you're being like babysat for like given training wheels, but
Yeah,
I mean the tools are at our disposal,
right.
so
It's a
why
lot
wouldn't we?
safer.
Yeah, exactly. But you did the Discovery flight in the older Cessna with the six pack though, right?
Yes. Oh yeah.
And then did you expect that to be somewhat what you would find when you started flight training?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
I had no idea what a G1000 was at the time. I thought the instruments in that cockpit were, pretty advanced. I was like, wow.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
You said you were
hmm
doing dispatching for police dispatching for about 5 years, right?
hmm
And then of course you say like quarantine comes around and it's like, maybe it's time to go ahead and take a look at some of these things. What prompted you to even think about uh flying? Really, like what was the earlier on like initial interest?
So I've always wanted to be an astronaut. I
Okay,
don't see that ever happening. We don't know yet, of
yeah,
course,
you don't know, you
but
don't know.
it's kind of always been on the back burner. So obviously, to become an astronaut back in the day, you go to flight school and
Hmm.
get climb the ranks and figure out how to get up there.
Yeah,
Yeah, but so I'd say that definitely started it.
hmm,
And then I've been
yeah,
on planes since I was 14 months old with my parents, on vacation and stuff. And they always said I never cried. I mean, I don't remember this, but I never cried or had any
yeah,
issues on airplanes. So I was
yeah,
like, oh, okay, well
yeah.
maybe I could do this. And the opportunity just wasn't there. Once the pandemic hit, they dropped the requirements. Most airlines dropped that college degree requirement. So I was
Hmm.
like, well, I don't really want to go to college, and I didn't want to be having to deal with that plus flight school. And they took that away, and I was like, well, maybe I could do it.
Yeah,
And then I
yeah,
started looking around, and the gears started turning. And after being stuck in the house for a while, after the lockdown and stuff, I was like, okay, we can
right.
do anything. We can just move across the country and pursue our dreams. And I did.
Did you have to work from home during quarantine? Were you able to with the
So
police dispatching?
after I was done, so the thing was, I
Yeah.
ended up quitting. I resigned from police dispatch because I knew I was going to sell my house, and I was already done with that in general.
Yeah.
And then I worked for a bank, working from home for 2 years, investigating fraud, while I
Okay.
was in the transition period of figuring out where I'm going to go and what I'm going to do.
Okay.
So yeah, I did get to work from home.
That's
So
an
yeah,
interesting shift in of itself that I guess we won't spend too much time on. But you went from police
I
dispatching
just
to the fraud
yeah, I
investigation.
needed something in the interim, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's cool. Okay.
yeah,
Gotcha. Well, maybe it goes without saying, but it sounds like those are some stressful jobs to
yeah,
me,
for sure,
especially
for
police
sure.
dispatching. And so
Yeah.
I would imagine I applaud you for sticking that out for 5 years.
It was
Uh,
fun though, and
yeah.
it really put the emphasis on emergencies and whatnot, and what training can do. Because if you're prepared and trained for anything, doesn't matter what happens, you can respond to whatever's
Mm.
going on. So I feel like that's also the same for aviation.
Yeah, it was like a transferable skill, right? Of thinking
Yeah.
about procedures and safety and things like that. When you came into flying, did you expect anything different than kind of how it's been going?
Yeah, I
So,
would say like learning the Part 141 ways of like stage checks and everything like that was kind of, I
mm,
was like, I didn't understand the difference between Part 141 and 61 schools at the time.
yeah.
And I liked that there was, the structure once, I mean, I knew there was some kind of structure that was going to take place, obviously, but I didn't understand the timing of it and how it worked.
Mm.
And I feel like I'm grateful for it in a way because it kind of holds your feet to the fire and
Yeah.
prevents, any kind of procrastination. So
And that's and earlier, so that's what I wanted to ask you about that. You say like anti-procrastination. Now I've always struggled with procrastination, and
we all do it.
that
Yeah.
makes me
Yeah.
anti-procrastination a little bit.
Yes.
Maybe people who don't struggle with it as much aren't necessarily anti-it because
Yeah.
it's not relevant. But that's I wanted to ask you. Have you struggled with it before?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Uh, I feel like definitely in the ground knowledge for instrument, at first I was kind of procrastinating it, and I'm
mhm,
glad that I had some instructors that talked some sense into me, and
right.
ended up working out. So
Yeah, and that's one thing that it sounds like if I were to go into a route, right, where I wanted to get a pilot license or something like that, I think I would appreciate a school that has a structure like this,
yeah,
or maybe a program or whatever it may be, because I need something to kind of walk me along. Not
yep,
that I won't do the work, but I can lose my sense of direction pretty quickly.
right, right.
So, well, that's nice to
Very
know.
grateful for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I first started working here, I actually asked a lot about how that worked. I thought it was I didn't know if it was like a college, like a university setup, or
Right.
if you're just
Yeah.
kind of thrown in there and you got to figure it out. But I think we have a pretty unique thing going on.
Yep.
So, well, we're gonna move forward. Oh, I wanted to ask you about that. You said rotorcraft. Did you say that earlier?
I did. Yeah. I just
Gotcha.
still do want to go there at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
can you explain to me what that is?
Helicopters.
Helicopters.
Yeah.
Oh, just okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So would you be interested in flying them, or is that?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
My parents, they were EMTs, firefighters, long line of firefighters, and like I said, police dispatch. So I'd love to do medevac or even some sort of sheriff or something that I could fly helicopters for, good cause.
Nice.
Um,
Yeah.
but that's long out.
And
So
that, and well, that's
yeah,
fine. It's just nice to think about it still. It kind
yeah,
of gives like a sense of
it's a
direction.
goal for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool to hear that you do. Would you say that you are you kind of desire to marry some of your interests or experiences? Because it sounds like you still kind of want to make your way back to some of the emergency
hmm
services and things like
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I feel like with aviation, there's so many options.
Hmm.
You're not really limited to just flying students around for the rest of your life. You can, change directions if you really want to, if you have the hours and
Yeah.
the right connections. I feel like
Absolutely.
there's just so much opportunity for it.
So there was a moment for you that it all began to seem a little more attainable than it used to,
Yeah.
and it was like a combination of like being at home, switching jobs, and kind of just doing what you always wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Is there something that draws you to like maybe police work or medical stuff?
I think just helping people.
Yeah,
That's the cool thing about teaching because you do get to really enhance somebody's life and help them kind of pursue their own goals while doing that for yourself, which is neat. It's very
yes,
complimentary and rewarding. They're their own person doing it themselves, but you kind of got them to that point, which is pretty neat to see.
yeah,
So I'd say just
nice.
watching the gears turn in their head is very rewarding. You're
Yeah,
like, oh, I get it now.
yeah,
Like,
that makes sense. I see
yeah,
like a light bulb go off a
yeah,
little bit here and there,
yeah.
and you're kind of just now getting into that, right? So you're a CFI. You've been a
hmm
CFI for maybe about 2 months,
Yep.
right? So you're still getting your bearings there. How's that transition been going from being a student to a CFI?
Uh, so it's not as big as a switch that I thought it would be,
Hmm.
because you're still flying, every day, and you're still in contact with everybody that you already know, and you're just wearing a black shirt now instead of a red shirt.
Yeah,
So that was rewarding, I think, to put that black shirt on
yeah.
after all that time.
So, are
Yeah,
you
it's a
working
lot.
with students? You said you did some ground classes
I
already.
did have one ground instruction course. We
Mhm,
had instrument for the ZTA program.
mhm.
So I think it was about 15 days of classes.
Yeah,
Went pretty well. Definitely nerve wracking at first. Like I said earlier, the
yeah,
stage fright thing is real. The
yeah,
cool thing is when you're at Thrust, if you go through the academy, you already have some practice of teaching or speaking in front of a class.
yeah,
But then it's up to you now to follow, the course guide and the outlines and the syllabuses and everything like that. So
yeah.
once you get your bearings the first couple days and you realize what's expected of you, then it's
Mhm,
pretty good. Going through the school, I think myself helped teaching the
mm,
class because I saw what those instructors did or didn't do,
mhm.
and that was really beneficial. I feel like just seeing how it goes.
Yeah, being
Um,
able to follow suit sounds like a nice thing to have at your resource.
yeah,
So,
and it definitely keeps you sharp
yeah,
because
it
it
definitely,
forces you to.
yeah,
Yeah,
because you kind of have to know, you got to know anything that anyone could ask, right?
yeah,
I'm
and the
sure that's
questions
definitely,
are random.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything notable yet that's kind of going off there? Like, oh, I didn't realize that until now. I would have known this unless I was an instructor.
Uh, I feel like since I was a student and I had instructors with me the entire time for the most part, minus my solos, I realized how I was really relying on them, but
Mm,
it's a different kind of feeling now when someone is relying on you.
mm,
So staying sharp at the emergencies and making sure that you are seeing and avoiding traffic, and that is your responsibility as a CFI
wow.
now. So I feel like that. Did I answer your question?
No, you did,
Okay,
actually, it's really good.
good.
Actually, I think I might double back on it a little bit more.
Mhm.
Do you think you're able to maybe describe the difference between your role as a student and your role as an instructor when in the cockpit? Compare the 2.
Yeah, so as a student, you're constantly learning. You're trying to absorb this information while trying to act as PIC and fly the plane,
Mhm.
safely and to standards, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then when you're an instructor, your job is to not only make sure that they are doing that, but
Yeah.
then you're also keeping them and yourself safe.
Mhm.
And you're always looking out for other aircraft in the area too, as far as like you're trying to help them out and avoid them as well. Especially on at Thrust, we have multiple planes out there at the same time, so sometimes you have to talk to each other, and
Yeah.
so that's another added just point to make there.
Yeah. It
So
sounds like your
it's a
your
lot
focus
more.
shifts from, yeah,
Yeah.
shifts from, like, inside to outside almost.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, it sounds intense, but, I
It's
mean,
fun.
have you been going up in the area yet with
Oh
them?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
know when that really started as
hmm
as an instructor,
So
so
usually within a month or so or less, preferably, they'll get you checked out on a flight, and then
yeah,
you can start teaching students.
yeah,
So yeah, it's a little bit nerve wracking. Your first flight, something will always like be strange or be a miss. Like,
yeah,
but once you get over that first couple flights, I'd say it's
you're in
the
there.
same thing you do every day. It's just
Yeah.
a job.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
makes sense. And it being a job, earlier you were talking about maybe before the camera started rolling, how much you really do like flying, and I mean that's one thing that's great about having it as a job. Like, how do you balance it being a job and you still enjoy doing it? Is that tough?
I wouldn't say it's tough for me just because I mean, like, for example, waking up at 3 a.m. is not fun.
Right.
But when you go to fly, you're like, okay, this is so worth it. When you get
Okay.
to the airport, I feel like it everything that your brain wakes up better, and you're just like, yeah, I'm going to go fly. And then when you get
Hmm.
airborne, you're like, wow, yeah, this is worth it.
Wow.
You see
That's
the
like
city
being in the
lights, and
zone, right?
yeah,
How often do you have to fly that early?
probably almost every day
Yeah.
that I work.
Hmm.
I love the morning shifts. I really do. I'd prefer them. It's nice that you get some night hours in the morning and then it transitions. You get to see the sunrise and whatnot. So that's
I
pretty
kind of like
cool.
that too.
I'd rather definitely be morning shift than the night shift, and you get to avoid most of the traffic. So
Yes.
here it's not too fun with traffic, but
Yeah.
as long as you're in the right hours, you're good.
Yeah. Was that an adjustment? Like, did you ever have to do that for your other jobs or anything?
So I like traffic or like waking up early.
I'm sorry, waking up early.
Oh yeah, waking up early. I used to work a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. shift, so that was 12 hours. I also did the 1 p.m. or no 1 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Oh wow.
It was
Yeah.
13 to 1, 100, and
Did you do that for the police dispatching?
yeah,
Wow, I didn't know
yeah.
they all did 12-hour shifts or some
Usually,
places. Or I guess
yeah,
I didn't know. Is interesting. I almost have more questions about that, but I guess that would be off topic.
yeah. It's okay.
But you've done the whole work at crazy hours kind of thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that wasn't too bad of a thing with flying. And again, like as soon as you start flying, then you're like, okay, this ain't so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then for let's say for someone who may be in a Part 61 school, or maybe someone who's considering going to any sort of flight program, could you maybe go through a quick rundown of like what like a day looks like that way? You
Like as a student.
yeah, yeah, as a student or even where you are now. Maybe a student is a little better.
Yeah, so waking up early when you're a student and
Yeah.
maybe last night you were up studying or something like that,
Yeah.
can be a little challenging. I hope if you have the love for aviation, like
Yeah.
most instructors do, then it's not so bad once you get up in the air.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's going to be some major downtime in between your
Hmm.
flight and your class,
Yeah.
so use that time wisely. If you are able to go home or somewhere to a friend's house, or maybe even at the school, someplace that you can relax and kind of get out of the noise
Hmm.
and study.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing to be able to do that with that downtime. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you've got your studying, you've got your tests to take, you've got your flights, and you're studying. I think I
Yeah.
said studying twice. Emphasis on that.
Right, emphasis and no, and there
Yeah,
is a lot of emphasis on
yeah,
studying. It sounds like there's like 3 to 4 checkpoints for everybody to go through each day when they're a student, right? Kinda
yeah,
like the like you said, studying
yeah,
maybe 2 times,
yeah.
but then there's flying, there's a little bit of practice, and then there's, like, ground courses for the beginning of each rating, right?
Right. Yeah.
So as far as ground courses go, though, as a student, like, what does that really look like? And is that something that's unique about our program? Like, does that look different in other places that if you know? What do ground courses
So
look
I
like?
don't have any experience about other schools. Can't speak for that.
Uh-huh.
As far as our school with the ground classes, it's fairly similar to like I'd say a college class.
Mhm.
There's a projector, there's the whiteboard, and there's an instructor teaching you this material. We have certain curriculum that we follow,
Mhm.
and the students are there able to ask questions all that they want during the time, obviously.
Mhm.
And even if you need more time, I'm sure someone would sit down with you and answer questions. You take notes. You make sure that the knowledge that you're getting is going to be useful at some point.
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel like everything in our program, you're going to end up using. Not only is it required by the FAA to certain topics are covered, but you're gonna be using that knowledge and information to better your skills and to become a better pilot. So
Yeah.
I feel like it's really useful to have that downtime on the ground where you're not focusing on flying a plane, but you're
Mhm.
able to ask questions and basically hit pause and say, "Wait, I don't understand this. Can you explain this better?"
Right, when you're
So
not in there.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, what way does it fit into the program? Is it like, do you take it every couple months or
Oh, so with the ground schools,
Mhm.
usually it's like once you start a new rating, you start with the ground
Okay.
school. Usually around the same time, you'll start either simulator training or flight training at
Mhm.
the beginning of that. But you'll probably have a couple days of class before you do anything else.
Mhm.
And then you'll keep going to class while you're flying or learning until the required hours are met.
The
Or
required hours of ground courses?
right, yeah, the
Gotcha,
required
okay.
ground time is met, or until you're satisfied, I guess, with your knowledge there.
I think we covered a lot of great things. I learned a lot, I think, during this conversation, to be honest. I hope that our viewers did, or anyone who's listening on any of the platforms. Anyone who's still listening, I'm assuming you found something interesting. Please give us a like, a rating, a follow. If you're on YouTube, we really enjoy when people ask questions in the comments because I can always bring them in to the next episode. We want more of that. We want to hear what y'all want to know. So, yeah, please participate there. Otherwise, we'll see you guys again next week. Thank you so much, Gary, for joining in on this episode of Pilot Say What.
Thanks for
Uh,
having us, and
Absolutely.
thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah, absolutely.